perspectives, different views, one voice.
Yeah, guys, welcome. Thanks for tuning in. I think we need to really thank our listeners, guys. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Whether you're a first timer, whether you've been with us, we really do appreciate you guys tuning in. My name is Kojo, and I'm having this conversation with my two co-hosts, Ali and Mo, and also with our guest, Dayo. So our conversation today is about how does France still influence the francophone speaking countries in Africa. I guess the genesis of this for me, and I'll just go around quickly for people to talk about a bit of what they know about this. I guess first of all, we will need to break down what francophone means if you've never come across this term before. Francophone, in regards to colonialism from France, when France actually left some of the states in Africa, they made like a francophone state, which is like a French-speaking colony of France. So I guess when we refer to the term francophone, that's what we mean by that. Does anyone want to elaborate? Or
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. It's all the countries in which were colonized by France and their independence was from the French colony.
Yeah. So basically, it's the Commonwealth version of the French-speaking countries.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly what that is. So I guess our conversation really is looking at those countries and looking at the impact that does France still have an impact on them, or whatever that impact kind of looks like. I guess for myself, I came across this conversation by the African Union representative for USA, a lady by the name of Dr. Arikana Chihombori Kwe. And she was the AU representative for America. And I watched a speech where she was talking about post-colonialism in a lot of the French-speaking countries. And she made a lot of factual conversations, which I was actually shocked by because I didn't know a lot of these things. And so that's kind of what prepped me for this conversation, because I felt like a lot of people were not aware of it. I feel like now it's a bit more out there, especially from her, unless other people came through other streams of hearing of this. But that's where I kind of first knew of this conversation. You guys, yourselves?
I mean, for me, it wasn't more in terms of that particular article. It was just, I also just read a big headliner which said that 22 African presidents have been assassinated by France.
Yes, that was part of the article that was doing the rounds as well. Yeah. Kind of. Yeah.
I think for me, if I'm being honest, no. I think just obviously listening to you guys talk a little bit, and from my point of view, I kind of feel a little bit ashamed that I don't know a lot about the francophone countries in Africa and the history and the colonialism in terms of what's happened there. And I think, I don't know, maybe it's just because obviously I'm more from the English-speaking countries in Africa. I focus more on the British colonialism in Africa and the rule. So I think today for me will be more educational for me, if I'm being honest, than more me giving quite a lot of insight into that topic. So I think it's quite interesting to listen to what the rest of the team have to say. But also I am going to be able to research, obviously, once I got a topic. And there are some interesting facts which I would like to share with the team today. So I think to me it's more educational, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. Well, for me, it will be educational as well at the same time. However, this situation that is happening is a bit of ridiculous and naive, and to be frank about it, it's not even only France, it's Belgium as well. And what is happening shouldn't be tolerant, because we are in this 20th century now. Shouldn't be tolerant. So I kind of blame ourselves in a sense whereby we know as an African we need to improve, and we need to forget about the timeline, what has happened, which it hurt. However, but what I've noticed, for example, you've got over 30 speaking countries, Euro, Africa, within part of America as well that speak French, is that when it comes to the black community that actually speak French, they they embrace it very much within their culture, within everything else. They proper embrace it. And when it comes to Black history, for example, we're not taught this. We're not taught about none of this stuff. So we have to learn it ourselves. And I feel like that is, as what our guest is saying, we need to make sure that we learn and teach ourselves and forward it to our children for them to embrace this and make sure they empower themselves.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I think this definitely opens up for more to actually lead the conversation. I guess this is the backdrop where we felt a lot like a lot of these things have been happening and we're not aware of it ourselves. The whole point of this platform is to educate. So I guess really the starting point here could be the article that you came across, because I feel like that's the article that a lot of people are aware of.
Yeah.
That the article of France being involved in 22 assassinations. I think in the francophone countries they mention about 52, or is it 56? So there's been the stat with that article. I believe there's been about 55. It's around the 55, 56 mark type of thing. Coups in Africa. Everyone knows what a coup is, right? Yeah. Coup d'etat.
Yeah.
Coup d'etat. It's a French word. It's basically when you overthrow a government.
So they invented coups.
They invented coups. Yeah. So there's been over 50-something coup d'etats in Africa, and France have been directly involved in 22 of them. And I guess that's the 22 that we know of. What about the ones that you don't know of, mate? Yeah. So I guess that could maybe open up. That's where a lot of people found this from. So I guess I'll pass it to you.
Yeah. So reading the article, I think one of the interesting things that I kind of discovered in it is that in the last 50 years, there's been a total of 67 coups in the whole of Africa, as in actual attempts to overthrow the governments.
Okay.
And of the 67 coups, happened in 26 different countries.
Okay.
And of the 26 different countries, 16 of those countries were ex-French colonies.
Okay.
So that's the dangerous thing, is that's literally like over 50% just from France's own thing. So when they say they invented the coup, I mean they mean that literally. But yeah, I just feel that why is there still such a grip on Africa and the African countries? Why is it that France still feels that they need to control the countries in that way?
I think it's because of what they're getting out of it. It's the resources they're getting out of it. Apparently they're getting over £1 million or £1 billion in a year alone.
Which I think almost ties in perfectly into something which, again, I only came across yesterday when Koji told me about it, and I've been doing a lot of research into it, and this was this Berlin conference of is it 1884? And I think it leads perfectly into Alex's point. Again, that conference, just in summary, it was the gathering of the European powers at the time, and it was how they sort of divided Africa into they sort of divided it like a piece of cake to say, you know, I'm going to take this part, you're going to take this part, you're going to take this part. And I think that led to what became colonization.
Yeah.
And I think from that colonization, it also led to them saying, okay, obviously when the African countries got independence, obviously the independence wasn't free. I know we like to feel independence was free. Yeah. It wasn't free. It came with a price tag.
Yes.
And the price tag was like, you're going to pay us to leave. Because we're leaving your country, yeah. We're getting so much resources from your country, we're not just going to leave. So if you want us to leave, this is what we're going to do. We're going to come to this repayment plan. Yeah. It's almost like reparation, like with the Germans or something. Like, we didn't commit a crime here, but we're paying back. And I think that is what has led to quite a lot of, a lot of the African countries still paying this debt back to France.
Yeah.
But in return, they've sort of almost like they finessed it to say, oh, we will then help you out when you have financial aid, when you're going through difficult times, we'll provide you with military support.
Yeah.
So it's tied into this very, very controversial sort of like look in terms of you're giving us something, but we're giving you back something. But in actuality, you're not giving us back anything. You're just taking from us.
That's it.
And I think it's very, very sad, really, to be honest with you. It's very sad because it's a debt that I don't know how long these French-speaking Africans are going to
There's no contracts on that. That's the funny thing about it.
I think the whole give and take thing really is what came after. So I know there was the Guinea leader Sekou Touré in 1958. So he was the first leader to try
to leave. Yeah. This is just what I was going to touch on anyway. Go on.
And in him trying to leave, France was like, no, this can't happen. So they literally went into the country and destroyed everything that they felt was something that they brought to improve or develop the country.
Yeah.
And literally destroyed and ransacked everything.
Sorry, what do you mean destroy?
So I will just touch a bit on what Mo was saying. So this is what I'm saying, how I came across this conversation by this Dr. Arikana. Dr. Arikana.
Yeah, you just
I've got the video. I'm not accepting this. So how she explained it. So first of all, she gave a breakdown of the France colonial powers. And a lot of the stuff that you touched on, Ali, from the beginning, well, of course, it's the resources. Yeah. So the whole idea of independence is that you're meant to actually run your own country. But then, of course, one thing that the French were not prepared to do is to be missing out on these resources. This time, so there is a pact. I need to find the name of the pact. But there was a pact that was signed by all the francophone-speaking countries where it's meant to be that the pact was to do with resources. If you find any resources in the country, we have first refusal. It came to do with their companies could come into the country. Also to do with any reserves. So 80% of the actual reserves, money reserves in that country has to be it has to be banked in a French central bank. So the money, you get the money, it comes to us. Then when you want some of the money back, you have to come and ask us for it. And you can only borrow 20% of this. Like seriously, when I was hearing some of these stats, I was like, are you having a laugh? But anyway, just touching back on what you said, the example for that country, even the water pipes, they poured concrete in them to make sure that no water runs through them. Because France, the whole idea of France is that we've come and colonized you, we brought a lot into this country. So if you're saying that you don't want us if you don't want to sign this pact and you want to come out of this pact, then this is what we're going to do. But the key thing for France to do that was to show the African countries that if you try to leave us, this is what's going to happen to you. So this is what I'm saying. It's a scaremongering thing. I think for me that the frustration comes, and I'll let Mo bring me back if I'm going a bit off in here. But the frustration really that I have here is that a lot of the time we start blaming ourselves to say, oh, we're not doing this, we're not doing that. Some of these countries, as I keep on saying, they are crippled. It's only when you know some of these information, that's when you know what the governments are playing with. Because you could only imagine, if you are running this country, and I always say a country is like your house. If you're running the house, you and your wife running this house, obviously your wife is the president, you're the prime minister or whatever. No, you're not the president.
It's the queen.
It's the queen, No, she's the king and you're the queen, you're the PM. Yeah. So if you're running that country and there's an external force that dictates to you what you can and can't do, then you are not really, the subjects of that country do not really belong to you. Yeah. But the problem that we have is that the subjects look to you because you're running that country to say that you're not doing a good job, not understanding the external forces. And then the problem that happens is that your subjects, as in your children, will then go to your neighbor, who is the external force, go and live in their house and be like, oh, yes, I told you, look how shit that house is. Yeah. Not understanding that your neighbor is actually the reason crippling you, not giving you the power to do that. Do you get what I mean?
Let me stop you there. Is it not our fault for us to educate our children to know exactly what's going on?
When you say, is it not our fault? Education is. I feel like. No. I'm going to answer it directly. I'm not even going to be like a politician. I'll answer it directly.
You've tapped into a vital information. What you're saying, we're not. I feel like we blame ourselves for not knowing the information. Right? Agree? Is that what you said?
I said. I think what I said is that when people, because a lot of the times, and this is one thing I've always said, if you know me, when we travel, when we come to the Western world, we go to uni. So what we start thinking is that we know more. So we start looking back at Africa to be like, oh, why they're not doing this, why they're doing it. We try to act like we know more. And I feel like a lot of it is coming from a wrong place when you don't actually know why it's like that.
Okay.
Yeah. This is my problem. And then even I say that for culture and tradition, that before you go and start complaining and saying stuff, know what it is about in the first place.
All right. So what you just tap into that. You're saying that what we don't know, so why do we blame it? So the first of all, in the African community, like in Sierra Leone or in Congo or in Ghana, if the situation is out there, right, and they know about it, from my understanding, is it not the government, its power and its right to make sure when we're getting educated in Africa, within the individuals Africa, to be educated of what has happened within the history, so that if, for example, I've come here 5 years old or come here 15 years old, then if I have that information, I don't have to blame Africa. I will have to find a way, if I want to become a part of the government, find a way how to help.
Yeah.
But because I don't know the information, now we're learning how to know the information. We are blaming Africa. Does that make sense?
I think the other struggle in that is purely on one of the first things that we mentioned at the beginning, which was coups. So what you'll find is with a lot of these coups is that you will get some people that will come into power that will have the benefits for the country or to educate the country, but they're assassinated before they can even do any of those things.
I just want to segue a little bit off, just make a point clear, and I think this is for the younger viewers listening to this, and I think it's something that I just want to make quite clear, and I think Ali touched on it at the start, and I think it's important to understand this. And I think the reason I'm talking about this is because I remember my history teacher said something back when I was in school, like, oh, colonialism, obviously the colonists came, they brought in education, they brought in religion. Can I just make it quite clear?
Sorry.
Yeah? No one invades another country to educate them, or to bring you colonize a country and you invade a country solely for its resources. All right, it's about economic gain. So please do not let anyone say colonialism was a good thing. The intention was never to, hey, more, I'm going to come into your house, take charge of your house because I want to show you how to clean your room properly. No. I'm coming to you because you have something that I want and I want it for free.
And I'm going to get anyhow.
Yeah, and I think that ties into obviously what Ali said at first in terms of the resources aspect, but also what you said, Ali, in terms of being educated, knowing what, once we have this education as to what's going on in Africa, you're right, they will kill you, unfortunately. And if you look at the history, you've got people like Thomas Sankara, like he's probably one of my most famous Pan-Africanists. That he believed in self-sufficiency, not borrowing from France. And I think the French government actually assassinated him from his best friend. And that's just a perfect example.
Yeah. Okay. So in regards to what France were doing, just one thing that I wanted to mention. It was called the Colonization Continuation Pact. And the idea is that once you gain your independence, you sign this pact. And then we already mentioned about Guinea, the Guinea president that opted out. I think one of the slogans that he said at that time was that we prefer freedom in poverty to opulence in slavery. That's actually a statement that he made as to why he had to leave. They had to leave. And I think part of the settlement, part of the agreement in that continuation pact as well, is that you have to use the franc, which is currency. The money, the currency, franc. And you had the president of Togo as well that wanted to opt out because he felt like that was not like to his benefit. But then France, when they calculated that the debt that Togo owed to them was about 40% of the country's actual GDP.
Can I just ask, how was this so this issue of debt that Africa or this francophone country, and I think even Nigeria to an extent owes debt. My question is, how did it come to this figure? It comes down to the fact that the independence, was it actually independence? Again, it's always that question because if you're leaving my country after you've been there for years, which you've taken my stuff for free, why do I have to pay you to leave? It's almost like a ransom, isn't it?
Well, it just comes to the fundamental term that independence is not given, it's taken. So for them to give you this perception that they've given you your independence, it's just an illusion, a facade to hide what their true agenda is in that sense. But then everything has to be, as we would say, PC, politically correct. So they have to give this perception that this was a give and take and it was under mutual terms.
Yeah, but then I think this is why this whole what's this whole global stuff that's like African Union and all those kind of the world, what's these things? The ones
World Bank?
Not the World Bank, but they're like it's like a governing body that's meant to look at different states. So if you're doing something bad in Nigeria, they'll step in.
African Union.
No, not the African Union. I mean the world one of African Union. There's a world one, isn't there?
Yeah, I forgot what that's.
But anyway, this is why I don't really agree with all these kind of things because they already know a lot of these situations. But then I think a lot of the times you have to go back and see the state of a lot of these African countries. So imagine that you've been oppressed for such a long period, right? And then you want to gain this independence. And then this independence, the idea of freedom, which is only exists in your head because in reality you're not really free, as she said, you want it so badly that you might actually agree to certain terms that might not be beneficial to you, right? But then when we talk about beneficial at that time, those terms might be beneficial to you, considering the situation that you were in before. Yeah? Meaning that France is running that country. Now I could be president for my own country and run that country. So even though I'm agreeing to a lot of these terms, at this moment, the understanding could be that at this moment, it's going to be beneficial for me because I can't have a clean cut, because clean cut is just going to be a lot of these things that they did in Guinea. So you have to make that decision at that point. And then I guess the ideology could be, okay, once I have a footing, because you have people that might say they'll work in a racist company because they want to change it inside out, which is utter nonsense, mate. Like, you can't do that. No. And I was one of these people when I was in uni and I had to do this assignment where we had to do a presentation. I'm like, yeah, I work for this company because I'll go in there and change it inside out, because I had a lot of ideas in my head. But it's really when you're going through it. So they could have had some of these ideas that the minute that we actually come into power, we might have a bit more power to try to renegotiate some of these things without really understanding the extent and the force that France will be prepared to make sure that this colonial pact that was agreed still continues till today. And the French government, former government Sarkozy, he actually made a point to say if all these francophone countries actually took their money from France, it will actually cripple the French economy.
Yeah, took it out of the bank, yeah.
If they took it out of the bank, it will cripple the French economy.
And for example, Sweden as well. You have Swedish Bank. That's part of African as well, taking the money there. So not only France is also doing this, you also have Belgium. My whole conclusion to this, or I know I'm going to discuss more, it's crazy because we black, when we are in this French country like France or Belgium, we are so proud of speaking French. Do you understand? We are literally proud. Like in Congo, for example, there's two languages. They will speak French language and Lingala. And then obviously it breaks down to Kingongo and so on, right? But the main language first, no matter what, is French, right? And then afterwards it goes down. Why is that?
Just before you say, the only thing I wanted to throw in though is that when the French actually left, language was one of the key things as well. That was part of the pact, that you have to teach French in our schools. So I guess just before you, it's part of the pact. A lot of the colonialism, when you look at Africa, and the reason why we speak English fluently coming from the West is because the British did the same thing. So for France, that pact was definitely you have to teach French in our schools. But just to touch on it quickly, and this is the problem I kind of have. I watch a lot of things and my head just starts exploding. And that's just before I even found out about some of these things. Because you will watch, and Ali mentioned the thing, why is French more important than Lingala or Kikongo? Now, obviously, these languages, because Congo shares a border with Angola, and during the civil war in Angola, a lot of the Angolans went into Congo. So it's a language that's kind of shared between the two nations. Yeah. And I will watch something, and this is even just going into Ghana, where you have someone with a camera and a mic. They will go down the street and they will be asking Ghanaians to say certain stuff in English. And if they can't say it, they start laughing at them.
Yeah, I've seen that.
This shows you the brainwash where we are now, where you're not asking me to speak in my local language, in my dialect. If you do that, you laugh at me. Okay, you don't know your dialect. You're meant to know your dialect. You're asking me to speak in a foreign language. And when I can't speak in that foreign language, it means that we are not educated. This is the problem. So even when it comes to the French, if you are in Congo or you're in, what's the other French? I think Cameroon is French speaking, Ivory Coast. If you're in these places and you can't speak French, you are uneducated. The reason why you're uneducated, that means you haven't gone through the school system, because it's the school system that's going to teach you to speak French. Yeah. The same way in West Africa, if you don't speak English, you're uneducated because you haven't gone through the school system. And it's part and parcel of when they were leaving Africa, these are the things that they did. So you lose your mother tongue. You do not respect your own. Yeah. You keep disrespecting your own because your own means nothing. Because we've accepted it. Yeah. So it's so ingrained in us that to even step away from it is very hard. Yeah. They gave us a ruling system, even when it comes to this whole democracy and all that type of stuff. This is something that we've inherited. So when you look at the Ghana government, Ghana president, there was one time he gave a speech. I wasn't even, because I know Ali mentioned, he did give a powerful speech when it was with the French government, when they had to share a stage together. But one thing, what he said was about that the Western countries need to like stay out of our political systems, because in regards to this whole democracy and the ruling thing, we're so new to it. This is something that you guys have been doing for ages. You've mastered it. When you think of it, they've mastered it. How many years have they been running these countries like this? This is something we've adopted. So in our culture and our tradition, our people are getting used to these things. So of course we're going to make mistakes. Of course you're going to have the Minister of Defense or the Minister of thing just having these kind of assets that they feel like it's their own due to the ruling that was there before.
But also just to reinforce with the whole language thing, another thing that kind of sold and pushed them leaving their languages was when they're coming into all these territories, they're the ones that are creating this whole borders and lines in terms of all these countries that you find. And what you'll find as well is initially it was a group of different tribes in all these areas that had their own different languages. So what they would say is, if you speak French, then that's how you can communicate amongst this new country that we've now just created with the new lines and everything's inside there. So I know that's one of the struggles in terms of as well how they leave, because they'll always leave one kind of tribe more dominant over the others, if you get what I mean.
100%. I know exactly what you mean. And it's something that I've been talking to people about. When they left Nigeria, that's exactly what they did. When you read, what's that book? I forgot the name. Even when you read a book about the Biafra War, they did a movie about it. I forgot the name of it. But the whole idea was that the North, of course the English settled in the North. Like you could go through a lot of Nigerian presidents. All of them, most of them are from the North. Because that whole educational system was kind of set up there. And correct me anytime if I'm wrong. Right. But according to the history books, this is what they did, because when you create divide and conquer, you know that, as you mentioned, you make this elite tribe, you make them more of an elite tribe within the country, where now the North actually feels like it's a birthright to be a president, right? And that's the thing. And of course, you're going to have the South, the Yorubas, and saying that, what is this? It doesn't make any sense. But these are things that have been created before. So when I always keep going back to this, before we start saying, looking at ourselves, we have to look at ourselves and see things that have been there before. Because a lot of the times we're looking at ourselves, we're fighting among each other, we don't even understand why we're fighting. We're fighting because someone has created this kind of institution before, where they've created it with an intent. And this is the problem that we have. The intent, the way they think. This is wicked, if you ask me personally. It's wicked.
Can I tap into this, right? All of this colonization and this what is going on in France, Belgium, Europe, England, whatsoever, especially France anyway. You had the Belgium that came into, you had first the Portuguese. The Portuguese came, they did what they need to do, but they didn't extend to that much. Then afterwards the Belgium arrived, the Belgium went crazy, and then they left it to the France, and the France decided to do what they're doing till now. When you're talking about independent, I don't think that's independent at all. I don't think. You can say, I might be wrong. For me personally, it's not independent. How are you going to have an independent when there's a debt? And then the debt is so huge, right, that there's not a record of when it's going to end, right? So how can you say to yourself, I'm independent, but you are still enslaved?
But I think it goes back to Koja's point, isn't it? Is that question as to, at the time, what they had, anything was better than that. And they were willing to settle. And I get that point. And I think when you look here, it's, the way these pacts are written, it's so insidious that the way the colonial powers at the time sort of put together this pact or this sort of arrangement is, they know that in the next 30 years you will still be indebted to us.
Yes.
So by being indebted to us, you've opened the door for us to actually come back for more. So technically, you're right, absolutely right, Ali. It's not really independent. It's only independence on the face value to say, okay, yeah, you can rule your country, quote unquote, but you still need to pay homage to us. But I think my point, which I wanted to raise in terms of, going back to the question, obviously the impact of francophone, of France and francophone countries in Africa, it's something that we don't talk about a lot, but it's quite interesting. It's about culture and art and just the general influence in Africa. Because one of the things I noticed, which I came across a few years ago, is in the Congo, you have these people called the suppers. They dress and everything.
Yeah.
And the way they dress is akin to this way of dressing in France at the time called the dandies. Fine dressing. You wear the finest clothes, the finest silk and everything.
Let me stop you there.
Yeah.
That was already part of the history
of
the way they dressed, like that.
Of the Congo.
Yeah, that was part of it.
Yeah, but the dress sense is not African.
What do you mean part of the history?
Like
that history came after the colonial rule.
No. Congo, for what I understand, is they love the way of dressing.
Yeah.
Right? They're very, regardless of the colonialists or anything, they love to dress.
Yeah.
So obviously, when the colonialists came, they've got the opportunity to expand and give that kind of like gentleman look. Well, before that, prior to that, they was dressing like that anyway. Does that make sense?
Is there like any particular tribes or in particular that
Yes.
kind of showed that?
Yeah, but I don't know the tribe. I have to find out. But they had that.
I don't know. For me personally, I just thought it just came from post-colonialism. Go on. Sorry, let me let you finish.
But also, it's about, so the way I saw that, because I was speaking to a friend of mine, he's Congolese, and we're having this discussion because, to me, obviously, in Nigeria, we love fashion.
Yes.
We really do. We like to wear the best dress and everything. And I get that sometimes people, are happy to starve for months on end just to get the latest Gucci clothes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think when it came to the when I saw the francophones and especially like Congo, like it was weird seeing a country that had an extreme for Nigeria, because I thought Nigerians were going to be too hard on the fashion stuff.
Yeah.
But when you hear about what they did and how much it cost, and the fact that these people had nothing.
Yeah.
But then again, you also heard the explanation as to why they did that.
Yeah.
Because to them, putting on this garment gave them like a persona, a different persona. They felt that putting on this garment, all their worries and troubles for that night went away.
Yeah.
Now, my question is this. If I look at the way they dressed, to me, and I may be wrong, that's not the traditional African dressing. It's the dandy, it's the hat, the cane, the socks, the blazer. It's a European way of dressing. Now, if they wanted,
super fly though.
it's a,
I like dressing, my boy.
They look good, but also when you look at obviously things like, and me and Koji talk about this a lot, and it happens in West African. But when you see even Congolese artists, the music videos, it's like, well, why are we so keen? Why do we want to be accepted so much by the Western countries?
Can I add into that? But you guys are forgetting, Africa has always dressed not to impress, but they've always dressed to a point where the Western world came, saw that, and copied it and did their own. Because Egypt, you have to forget Egypt, we had all the luxurious that you can think of.
Yeah.
Egypt did the foundation, did the wig, right? So it branched down. We're forgetting this. Africa loves to dress. It's been like in our nation from day one.
Yes.
Apart from the colonized, it has.
We love to show off. Like,
but
we're very proud.
Yeah, we have
like
that.
when you look in even the gold, like in the kingdom of Ashanti, like they wear the gold. Like, it just shows us how proud it is. So that's always been part and parcel of it. We also do love color. Like when I go Ghana, like, seriously, I just see someone in a pink shirt, someone in a yellow shirt. Wait, they don't. This whole thing about color and wearing the blue or navy blue and thing. There's no concept of that in Africa. They just wear whatever they wear. Do you get what I mean? Even when you look at African prints, it's very vibrant. Yeah. Right? You have people, wearing it. This is just us. So I do agree with a lot of the stuff that you're saying. Yeah. I just feel like, but then it's not necessarily, I guess what you're talking about is the actual garments, whereas I'm just talking about being proud of whatever that you're wearing. because they love colours. They like to show the gold. They like to show that we're rich. They like to show all that type of stuff. So it's something that is just part and parcel of that African culture from before. I guess really what they've moved on to is then the whole dandy fly, buying the most expensive stuff. So they've kind of equated that. But obviously that money goes into the Western hands, innit? Because we're not buying our own designers. I guess it's the only thing that you could say about that specific thing, really.
I mean, yeah. I mean, definitely going on with what you've been saying, I did want to kind of throw a little spanner in the works in the sense whereby, initially in relation to the francophone countries, would you say then that we are under this illusion of celebrating independence? Should we still celebrate independence?
That's a really good question. Should we? I think, and I guess this is just what we know, right? So in regards to the whole colonial pact that the francophone speaking countries have signed with France, then anyone that's still involved in that pact, I don't think they should ever celebrate independence, because for me it makes no sense whatsoever. Yeah. Like actually reading, when we took a break, I kind of just read a bit about it. It's 85% of their national reserves has to be in the French central bank, and then they have to ask to borrow back their own money, 20% back at a time, with interest rate on top of that. So when you
interest on their own money,
So the idea that you can't look after it, let me look after it for you. I'm almost like a big brother thing, but I'm not really a big brother. I'm just really just getting as much. And this is what I'm saying. It goes so much back here, where someone will say, "Oh, but they found oil in this country. They found iron. They found this. They found that." It means nothing, because France have first refusal. So the French company could come and set up and get that resource directly from those countries before anyone else comes in. Yeah. So when it comes to you actually negotiating, this is what I'm saying, where it's like a boxer in the ring with your hands tied behind you. Who are you going to negotiate to? So I have this oil. Mo, you're America. You're France. You're England. You two are not really an option. The only person I have the option with is Ali, because Ali is France. So Ali could come in, look at the oil, be like, yeah, I like it. Forget you two. So for me, when people are looking outside and they'll be like, "Oh, why is Koji only negotiating within? Why are we only getting 20% of our own oil?" These are some of the reasons why these countries are run like that. This is predominantly the reason. And anyone that comes to break that trend, they make sure this whole start of assassination happens. This is the problem that Africa is in. So to answer your question directly, I don't feel like those countries have independence. But I say those countries based on the information I know, because I know a lot of African countries are under that kind of rule, but I'm not aware of.
I think Africa was going to step up. I don't want to say I might be wrong. I've seen vision in my head how Africa is going to be in the next 100 years. And it's slowly happening. Like Kenya, for example, are building one of the world largest country of technology, like in the desert, which is huge. And
it's like a Silicon Valley sort of.
Exactly. So it's happening, and Rwanda as well are building like a city, a town. Ghana are evolving rapidly as we speak, and evolving in a sense where the government have spoken widely and said, "I want my people back," and there's an investment, and he's going to find a way how to nourish that. And Nigeria, in a sense, Nigeria is evolving. It always has been. But the thing about Nigeria, they need to help out the community much more instead of trying to brutal. Because right now, what's happening? There's a lot of kidnapping happening now. Where
Ali, I feel like you're getting off the thing of the question I was asked.
I'm getting there. I'm just picking up all this point because in the next 50 or 100 years, I'm seeing Africa, one day they're all going to unite and come together. That's why, for example, they killed that government in when they were assassinating in America. What's his name?
But do you think that they
do you think that they're independent now?
Independent for me is a no-no, because as I mentioned previous, why you have an independent but you having a debt at the same time. But what I'm trying to tap into, Africa, all of this francophone is going to die out one day. I believe that. passionately believe is going to die. The reason why I'm saying this is because we are the second generation. I don't know if I can speak for you or our parents came here. They wanted to survive. They don't think about having buying a house or thinking about trying to, because the Caribbeans, in some of them now, that is our generation. Our generation, they're probably the third generation, right? So they are involved, they have evolved. So the African now, we are the first generation where we are getting married, having kids, growing up. We've seen a lot, so we're exposing. So our children are going to be the third generation, and I can see how they're going to embrace a lot of things. So
you're saying it's more an organic, as we evolve and grow over time, then it should die out in that sense?
Yes, it will be, because you cannot just come in and try to fight. If that happens, there's going to be an assassination.
Just answer the question. So 2 things. Should Africa celebrate independence? I think we should. The reason why I think we should is it's progress in a way. Having the ability to at least take some form of control. It's not full control,
but it's insulting.
It's insulting. Yes, I get you, but it's still some sort of control. Yeah. Would you rather we were where we were 60 years ago with the colonial power still having some sort of direct control? They still have control, but I think that control is slowly starting to shift. And I think it will take time. And again, unless we know the particulars of those pacts that were signed at the time, we will never know how long it will die out. Because again, we only know what's out there. Let's be honest. Like, there may be some insidious sort of loopholes to the pacts that we don't know about. But in terms of Africa celebrating independence, or this francophone country celebrating independence, I think yes, they should, because it's a victory in a way. In a way, it's a victory because in a way you said to the colonial powers, hey, you need to leave our house. It's the first step. At least you're no longer sleeping in my house. Leave my house. Yes, I'm still paying you rent, but at least you're no longer in my house. And I think over time, depending on how Africa decides itself, we may fully get out of that pact per se and actually become truly independent. But I think it's something to celebrate.
I think just on what you said, which is I agree on some stages you need to celebrate, because it's almost like setting yourself a 10, 50-year vision of how far you've come. Like, do you celebrate when you're like 20% to your target and say, oh, this is how far I've come, I was there before? Do you say, forget celebrating because I haven't actually achieved my target type of thing? We're not getting into the NHS issues, right? Let's put that aside, right? But then I guess for me, I'd like to go back to what the Guinea president said at the time, which is we prefer freedom in poverty to opulence in slavery, where I guess a lot of the times I find it difficult to say celebrate, but for some reason I understand where you're coming from. But I think it goes back to the first thing that Ali said, right? Where if your people do not know how crippled you are. So if I'm a father in the house and my children do not know how much I'm struggling to provide for you because of an external entity, then they could always look to me to say, oh, you're doing a bad job, It's not necessarily that I can't do better, because I'm not taking that conversation away to say that a lot of these states cannot do better, even with the current climates that they actually, environments that they actually work maneuvering. I'm not saying that. That's a whole separate conversation. But what I am saying, though, is that I guess a lot of the times it's information. So I go back to Dr. Arikana. Now, Dr. Arikana has put this information out there, and then you had that publicization of that article. Now, what that's going to do is going to put pressure on France, because a lot of people are going to talk about it. I hope this doesn't die down anyway, because the idea is that if I have the power, why would that change? What are you going to do about it? Do you get what I mean? Which becomes part and parcel of it. So, but that's the thing. Now, we have all this information now, because this is the problem I have now. We live in an age where information is widely available, and now people consume that information and they do nothing with it. So you could talk to anyone and go like, yeah, I know this. Oh, this is bad for me. But yet they still eat the same food, even though that they and I guess I'm in the same kind of thing. So when people say knowledge is power, knowledge without action is not power. Yeah. So I just feel like now it's really good what this lady is doing, Dr. Arikana, but I hope that French do not try to assassinate her and keep her quiet, because that's normally the trajectory. I've just taken it overboard, man. I'll let you come in.
Yeah, so I personally think, to answer the question, that I think it's not good to be celebrating the independence. And the main reason for that is the independence is an illusion of freedom. And I think illusions are a prison of action.
Yes.
And as long as we still keep celebrating this illusion, then there will be no action being done to break away from it. Because you think everything's okay when it's not actually in fact.
Yeah.
And in terms of where we've gone so many years and grown, I'll be really, truly honest with you, there hasn't been no real shift in power.
No.
And in terms of our generations going forward and stuff and evolving and moving, there has still been nothing that they would do if these controlling powers still have their interest. If they've still got their interest, it doesn't matter how many generations go by that may be aware or certain positions might be in place. They are still controlling how things run, and the real gain for that particular nation or population isn't really growing. I mean, come on, 85% of their income being held.
Okay. All right. Sorry.
The economics of it and the mathematics of it is astonishing. Like,
this is what I was coming back to your point. I'm saying in the next 50, 100 years, things has to change because China, that's something we're forgetting. You're saying France are under pressure. Also, China want to go in Africa. Everyone clearly knows what China is
China
trying
is
to do.
already in Africa.
No,
and very
what I
present.
meant, coming in Africa. They're already in Africa, but they want to take much more,
Yeah.
the region of Africa, right? At the moment, I don't know if you guys are aware of this. China wants to build a bridge from China all the way from Asia, going all the way to Madagascar, around that area, that region there. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this.
That's not going to happen, bro.
But yeah, they want to build that. Once they build that bridge, that's it. Because they want to, even in my country, in Sierra Leone, China are taking the dirt, they're putting it in the ship and taking it to their country. That's how ridiculous China is doing.
Sorry. Let me just go back. Can you just repeat that quote from the Guinea president in terms of?
It's an excellent quote.
It's a very good quote, and I think even the one you actually mentioned about illusion of freedom. And I
think what the Guinea president said is that, and this is when he secutori. This is when he made the decision to leave the pact, and he said, "We prefer freedom in poverty," meaning that come and block this thing, destroy our schools. We prefer that freedom to opulence in slavery.
See, now you know what? Hindsight is 2020. It's always a great thing in 2020. We're all sitting out here saying, this, that, and it's fair. We all have our own opinions and we all have our own ideas of how things should have been done. Now, my in terms of, I think, again, it's quite weighted to this because I'm usually the pessimist in the room. But I would say that, yes, independence should be celebrated because it is one form of victory. And I'll say this. Do you think that if the colonial powers had their way, they would rather still be in Africa right now and still be like physically there, subjugating?
It wouldn't happen. By now, it wouldn't happen.
Okay,
because
first of all,
media.
no, I'm sorry. Forget about the media. The only way you can get them out is by going through war with them. And let's be honest, we don't have the capability
That's
to
it.
go through war
It's
with them.
simple
So
stuff.
trust me, if they want to be there, they will still be there. Forget the media. They will
What do
manipulate
you
that.
mean we don't have the capacity to go
We
forward?
don't have the military power.
Wait.
We don't.
Question,
Ali, we don't.
Question.
Ali,
Question.
we don't.
Wait. Let me come in. Let's see what's there.
Where does all those resources that they're making, this ammo, where does it come from?
But that's irrelevant.
That's-
Whether
no,
let me answer you.
That's
It comes from
irrelevant.
Africa.
Yeah.
It comes from Africa.
Yeah.
The problem Africa has is here, and I keep on saying this, is the industrialization of Africa. Until we learn to do things with the natural resources that we have, then we're never going to be able to do anything. Because
Why
all
we're
these
learning?
resources.
Why we're not learning?
No.
Wait.
Wait.
No,
And then let's go back to the thing that you said. The reason why you can't have that war, because we can't produce these things in our countries. We always have to go to another country to give us, so they come and take our raw materials, they go and make their things, and then we buy it off them. That's what happens, and it's just ridiculous. So the point that he's making, that's what he means. We understand the raw material.
Perfect example, just to close the argument a little bit. The American and the British army are still the ones training the African armies to today.
Yeah.
You're giving us tactical
But
training.
it's not even just the American. Now you have the French,
armies.
and this is the stuff.
Israel as well.
Now, part of the
Israel,
pact,
yeah.
even added, part of the pact is that they have their own army bases within these countries.
Exactly.
So I will come back to that. I won't take you away from what you're saying, but that's just
No, seriously. So I think in terms of military power, we need to be quite clear.
We don't have any.
To go through that. And and someone that is quite adept in history of war, trust me, we do not have. Even America can take us if they want to.
What do you mean? Any of these countries could take us.
So I think so.
Ireland will most probably take us if they want to.
So my question is that the only way we could literally force that move through to say we want independence, we want full, complete independence without any pact is to declare war. And I think at that time, and even now, we're not in a position to do so. So I understand your point. I don't think we should be every day celebrating it and say, yeah. But I think it's a form of victory in a way because at least we've gotten them out of the house. And I think it's the first step. And it goes back to Alice's point. It's going to take a while to fully get to where we need to get to. Now, I'm hoping it's not 100 years, because if it's 100 years, then there is something wrong there, and it's something that's to be looked at. But I am hoping that hopefully in our children's generation, at least Africa can get to that point where we can say, you know what, we are either fully free or we're getting towards freedom. And to me, I think to me, and I do agree with your point. I don't think it's something. I think the way it's celebrated in Africa, even Nigerian independence, sometimes it's a bit too much. It's like, guys, calm down. But I think it's a form of victory because it's one step. It's one step towards the bigger goal. And I think it's something that needs to be acknowledged and say, you know what, at least we got them out. Now let's work again.
I think for me,
I want to follow on from what you're saying, though.
No, I was just taking an extract from what you're saying, so I'll let you go. And
All right, so just following, I don't want to take away in terms of the past that, they shouldn't have taken the independence and what we've done so far. I'm more referring in terms of, let's say we've got a race and there's hurdles on this race. And one of the hurdles is this illusion, that we think that we are independent countries. And we're celebrating this every year that we're now independent. So what I'm trying to say is, let's stop that illusion to continue in celebrating that sense. Get out that hurdle so we can get to that finish line.
Yeah, but then it's almost like the whole Trump thing, and I know a lot of people are not advocate of Kanye West or whatever, no, but the whole idea of Trump actually coming and telling black African Americans where you actually stay in this country, that we don't really give a damn about you. Because you've had other governments or other presidents acting like they care, but they do nothing to show that they care. When you've got Trump coming in and saying, look, we don't give a damn about you. You best fix up, or no one cares. No one actually cares in this country. Now, if you don't wake up from that, then you never wake up. Sometimes the illusion of other presidents coming in, acting as if, the black vote matter, this, that, but yet they're killing you down the street, is what makes you think that you're part of this big thing, but no one actually cares. So I guess it's part and parcel in it. I think it's harsh when someone's actually delivering to you that, you know what, you feel like you're in my house, but I don't give a damn about you. I don't care about it. It's harsh, but it's the reality of it, right? But I think this is the stuff here. We have to actually we have to see how big this is a task for a lot of these presidents in these countries. Absolutely. Like, it's such a big task to imagine that your former colonial powers that be, they have set up armies in your country. Then when you talk about influence, can you imagine? All these coups, all it is one coup.
Oh, yeah.
And this is the thing about humans.
You can't do it.
Of course, exactly. This is where the power comes. Yeah. Right? It's just power. And this is the stuff. With humans, people are greedy. So regardless of whether someone belongs in the same family with you, your brother could choose to take a cut.
Yeah,
someone else could just think to themselves to be, you know what? Mo's not going to be in charge anymore. I'll get to be in charge. And because of that reason alone, they might not think about all the other ramifications. Because of that reasoning alone, they might side with the Western world to overthrow you. And this is what happens. So a lot of times, I don't think it's an African thing because people are like, Africa this, Africa. It's not an African thing. It's a human behavior thing. If you have money in this country, you'll be sitting down with Boris Johnson right now, having breakfast. Him telling you all sorts of stuff because you have money to influence what he's doing. And this is all it is. So just going back to this whole idea of thing, I feel like, yes, you should celebrate it to a certain extent, and this is what independence means, right? Because independence, what it means to the people on the ground. When I say people on the ground, the people in Ghana, people in Cameroon, what they believe that independence means. Because a lot of these things that we're talking about is not being taught in their schools. So to them, they're truly independent. To them, decisions that are being made is truly by their government. To them, the abuse of power or the abuse of no unemployment or we find out oil, but we're not really getting or seeing anything from it, is from their governments making bad decisions without really understanding where some of these might be coming from, right? So for you to say to them that you shouldn't celebrate this independence is not necessarily fair because of the viewpoint that they have at the moment. So I guess in the broader scope of things, when we have this information now, because just before some of this information came out, if we had this conversation excluding this information, or we didn't have this information, I don't believe this is what the panel will be saying. A lot of people will go back to say, these francophone countries, how can they not do this? How can they not do that without this information, right? So if you could imagine that same state with what people are living in Africa, of course the independence means a lot to them. Because a lot of them had to fight for it in the first place. A lot of people had to die. Like, you never get anything. So I feel like with anything of fighting for freedom, unless you're prepared to put your life on the line, you're never really going to get any true independence. You're never really going to get any true freedom if you're not prepared to put your life on the line.
But what I'm going to come to the state of is like, francophone it's a language, and language is very powerful. So for them to make sure that French speaking is in the region of Africa, is because once they come in, they have control. Because I can imagine Congo alone speak a lot of different languages. Then you have Ghana, then you have Nigeria, then you have all of this. So if they have a country where if their language is spoken within these countries, it's really powerful. I think that's the reason why this is part of the colonization as well, because it's okay. Let me enforce my language into this country. So once we enforce my language in a country, I can able to maneuver anywhere I want to within this region, and that's the power of this Franco-Manco. And I find that really disheartening, because as an African, I need to be proud of my own language. It's like English is proud of speaking their language. So we have so many languages within Africa alone, which divides us, which I have to admit to. It does divide us, because within that language you have culture. Within the culture you have things that need to be set in place. But if we have one language for one country, whatever happens, that's their problem. It will kind of unite us, and I think that's what needs to happen. I think that's what really needs to happen. But there have to be hope, I believe. I think they have to.
Okay, so just to kind of close the conversation in this sense, I did want to touch on one kind of discussion or topic, in the sense whereby, yes, you might be getting people that are informed leaders that will want to change things and move them in the right direction, but then there's the fear of a coup, them getting assassinated. So I was saying, why is it that we have this idea whereby the individual is basically what is carrying the ideology, as opposed to the actual party or the group or the people? Because it won't die if this is something fundamentally carried on by the people, as opposed to the individual.
No, I think that's it. And I guess this is following on from, we went to a meetup with Dope Black Dads, and someone had this, they gave a presentation on the whole idea of ideology against leadership, which was very, very interesting. And I guess it goes back to most conversation about the ideology carrying the people rather than a leader. So if you put all your trust in a leader, once they cut off that leader's head, as in cut off the snake's head, the whole expression, then everything ceases to exist. But if you have that ideology, the ideology actually carries on, because anyone could step in. So the idea of having an ideology is more important than having a leader. Because if we have that one ideology, I could step in, be a leader. If they cut my head, Ali could step in. So you could always have that. And I feel like that has been done in Africa, because I feel like it's not, I wouldn't say a lot of leaders have chosen to take that path of ideology. But then when you talk about the key person that Pan-Africanism, everyone talks about, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. And the reason why people talk about Dr. Kwame Nkrumah is the ideology that Dr. Kwame Nkrumah had. He's been dead for how long?
Yeah.
So the only reason why his name lives on is because of the ideology, and the whole ideology of having a united Africa. Now, you're not going to have everyone in Ghana saying that Dr. Nkrumah was a great leader, but you will have a lot of people in the African states saying that the message of a Pan-African, one Africa, is very important, and that's what he was trying to do. A lot of the movement that Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, after Ghana got independence, and I think Ghana is like one of the first countries in Africa to get independence. The whole idea with the money that Ghana had was try to unite Africa. And I feel like even now when we talk about how can Africa move on, Africa could only move on if we are united Africa, if we represented as one entity. So Dr. Arikana, who is definitely someone that I look up to now, this former AU president, and I didn't even talk about her. So literally when she started talking about France's influence in Africa, a couple of weeks later, the AU leader actually, so she was stood down, she was sacked from her job. Really? Now, yeah, she's a former AU representative for America. She isn't an AU representative anymore because she's been sacked, right? And then the conversation went into why was she sacked? Because of course France is not happy with a lot of the stuff that she's saying, right? Because you're meant to keep quiet. When you're in these kind of roles, you're meant to keep quiet and keep nodding your head. So the minute that you don't toe the line and you come out and you say some of these things, now you have the AU leader sacking her for saying things that is true. Right? And so a lot of the times when you have puppets in a position, it's the reason why we don't have leaders that are prepared to put their head on the line. And I feel like that's what you need to do. But I just wanted to add that part to it. So there was like a petition online for her to be reinstated because a lot of people were like, why is she being sacked for? And then the AU came up with this PC thing to say, oh, it's not that, you get your term. You know, this whole type of things where sometimes you be told to, Mo, can you write something for us so we could give to the... You know that shit that you guys do.
Forced resignation.
Forced resignation, yeah, all that type of stuff. So anyway, what I was going to kind of say, because she made a point to say, like, for instance, if you look at a country like Togo, Togo is a very small state. It's a very, very, very small country. Now, if you put, and she used this expression about putting Togo in a boxing ring with America. Look how big America is. A state in America is way bigger than Togo. So how do you negotiate? You don't really have much to offer. So, of course, in regards to us sitting down negotiating, I'm always going to be getting way more than... America will always get better deal than Togo would because Togo don't have a ground to negotiate on. But every African country is being represented as one country. That was part of the whole divide thing with the Berlin Conference because you split them up in a way where they're not able to even function by themselves. They don't have grounds to function by themselves. Do you know what I mean? So when she was making that kind of example to say you get in a boxing ring and your hands are behind your back, because how's Togo meant to fight America? You can never fight America. So her whole ideology, which goes back into the whole Nkrumah idea of the United African Front, then if you are a United African Front, if we all here say, you know what, we're coming together, it doesn't mean that you don't do your deals. But when you're doing your deal and you're saying, you know what, I want 80%. I know that when you come to me, I'm going to say I want 80% because Ali asked for 80%. That's just a pact. You want to do anything in Africa, you could go to Dayo, you go to Ali, you go to Mo. I don't care because I know that when you go there, it's 80% that they're offering. So we don't have to fight among ourselves because the idea is divide and conquer. So the minute that we get our act together is how we're going. So I feel like, yes, just to answer your question, leadership is important, but leadership is only for a certain period. Whereas the ideology just carries on generation after generation. So the ideology, even Patrice Lumumba, a lot of the stuff that Patrice Lumumba was talking about, now you're only hearing their name because of their idea. We're talking about Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. You only hear them because of the ideology that they had. But there's been a lot of leaders. It's not like there haven't been a lot of leaders. But you will not hear them being mentioned because they didn't have that ideology goal. So I guess to answer, I'll say that ideology is very more important than leadership in that sense.
Definitely in terms of the leadership and ideology, and it's more just highlighting in terms of why have we struggled in Africa to continue the ideology as well as other nations might do with their political parties in that sense.
Because, I guess, and even the guy, I think I forgot his name, he gave the example where, like, when you look at America, like, regardless of who the president is, the machine must move on in it. And I use the expression of the train has to move on. And I like that. The whole expression is that regardless of who's on board the train, who's on driving that train is moving to the direction. We already set a direction in place. You're just there to make sure that the people, the passengers in the train are well looked after. But your job is just to go to that one direction. So for them, when they set up these kind of governance, even in the UK, you see all this infighting. Mate, they know what the ideology is. Trust me, they know what the aim is. So a lot of the times, we in Africa, we haven't bought into an ideology as a state, as a country. Like even in Ghana, normally when you talk about progression in Ghana, it depends I won't say that because the other the other parties are not going to be happy about this. But from my perspective, it depends on what party is in power, right? Where, like, for instance, now, Ali mentioned it as well. You have that the Ghana president now is making a lot of effort, and I know this is a conversation we're going to talk about. So I'll just put a little, drop a little thing here regarding the year of return, where he's kind of like, we're having Ghana ministers going up to even Caribbean countries to talk to them about African being your actual destination and you actually coming back. And they've done that in the Americans, they've done that in the South American areas and stuff. So they are understanding that in this whole idea of this black identity, in regards to where people are from, the African needs to take ownership of that and empower the diaspora of Africans abroad to feel that they are African in order for them to return. When you listen to this Dr. Arikana, and I need everyone to go on YouTube and watch a few of these. This lady is very powerful. Now, when she's talking to African Americans, she said, look, you are African. And there was a quote that Nkrumah made, it's like, you don't have to live in Africa to be African. African lives in you. Something along those lines. That as long as you're black, that this is like for people to feel like that sense of identity. And I feel like, and that's what I was going to say, that we fail to continue that ideology. One is because people are scared. Fear is a big thing. Sometimes I can't sit here and act like, if I'm in that position, am I going to be acting the same way? Because a lot of the times people talk about slavery. Oh, if I was there, I'll never have it. I'd have run away or I'd have fought back. Look, and then when it's being put on you, are you going to react in the same way? And it's not to say that even during the Middle Passage, some people didn't jump off and throw themselves because they'd rather die than be enslaved. It's not to say that you wouldn't behave like that. But I can't say whether I'll do that or not. So fear is just one main thing, because they use fear in order to govern us. So if you're a president and you're quite fearful, then of course you're going to buck the trend. Also, what's in it for me? So you have presidents that are in power that are very pally with the Western world because it allows them to build up all these fortune for themselves instead of looking after the country, right? And the Western powers are not going to say anything. But the minute that I don't listen to the Western powers, they'll highlight all that. They'll take you to the Belgium. What's that thing where they take you to the? Where's the Belgium place that they'll take you to? The former, if you've been like authoritarian, or they say that you've killed people. The Hague.
The Hague, yeah.
The Hague.
They'll take you to the Hague. All of a sudden, they take you to the Hague. But this time, you've been running the country for about 20, 30 years. And all these atrocities were there. So how come all of a sudden they take you there? So a lot of these things, the fear, what's in it for me? And I feel like a lot of the times as well, I think it's the ideology of democracy in Africa. It just doesn't work with our people. Because initially, that was not the ruling body of Africa. It wasn't like a democracy like that. I was just reading one article where it said Africa was just like a group of settlement. So we settle here, we say that you're the chief. The minute that we feel like you're being too overpowering, we just move that whole settlement and go somewhere else. So we don't have to live under your conditions. Do you get what I mean? So the rule of power, that whole democracy is in its infancy, and we're only trying to really understand how this actually works in the bigger scheme of things. So I guess that's what I'll say about that specific question.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, thank you everyone for your input for the conversation. I feel we've definitely uncovered quite a lot of things in terms of how the francophone countries have been influenced by France over the years. And I do want to open the question out to all our listeners in terms of how do you feel about the independence, and you can get a catch up from everyone.
Are you doing a wrapping up for everyone, or that's already done?
No, I want to do mine.
Yeah.
I want to,
Yeah, because I feel like you're really ending it.
So I just wanted to open up to everyone and just give me your thoughts on the influence on the francophone countries.
For me, learning from this is quite educational, and this francophone is that for young listeners and for young adults that don't know too much what is going on, as what Coach tapped on, don't blame Africa for what is happening, the leaders and etc. Yes, you do get leaders at this moment right now that are they're hungry, they want everything, they want the money, they want the luxurious, they want everything. And once they come in, they'll bring all their family in and bring their best friend in and so on, and just leave off that. But at the same time, there is more danger underneath of what we don't know of because of the regulation and the contract that is under place where it's not highlighted or hasn't been educated to us. Because as you can tap into, it's like we supposedly quote that we are independent, right? But behind that, in a closed door, there's quite a lot of debts. There's quite a lot of situation that is happening. Like 85% of our money, our resources are in another country, which is, I find that really insulting. And for moving forward and allowing Africans to learn about what is going on, so empowering themselves and have this knowledge is, first of all, is to learn exactly what is the independence all about, learn behind what contract has happened and what is the decision within that line of it, understand the power of francophone behind it, understand what's the influence of that. So once you've captured all of that and then embrace it, then you understand, okay, this is what is happening. So instead of just complaining, you have to be reasonable, but find a way of finding a solution of maybe we all gathered, empowering ourselves. But moving forward is that our generation at the moment, I don't think we have the legs yet to do anything. And if we do have the legs, the only way we can start off from now is educate our children to understand the core of what is happening in Africa. And once that happens, I believe that what everyone has tapped into, then perhaps there might be a solution. And but I believe, with my hope, what I do believe, I might not live to see the day. I do believe Africa will evolve, and when they do evolve, like the French Revolution, it will happen like that. Once that happens, I believe that Africa will have a power. But before Africa have that power, every African within Africa needs to unite. Once they unite, then it's not going to be easy, because obviously you've got the army, you've got the resources, you've got all of this. Once that happens, then perhaps there's a hope for Africa to empower themselves and say, you know what, we are strong, we are African, we can do quite a lot. That's what I think.
In terms of my wrap up, in terms of the influence of France on the francophone countries in Africa, I think from the discussion today, I think my view is that France still has a lot of influence on the francophone countries in Africa. I think there is an influence in terms of, and I think it's mostly around economic imbalance, in terms of, you know, that imbalance is favored towards France. I think the francophone countries in Africa, unfortunately, have committed themselves at the time of the independence to a deal which at the time seemed reasonable, which, and I think to understand, I can understand the reason somewhat why that was made. And I think, unfortunately, they're having to live out the terms and conditions of that pact. And I think because they're having to live that out, it's becoming quite a burden to them. And they're beholden to France for the foreseeable future. So I think because of their beholden to France, and France does control their economic sort of freedom, I think France ultimately has a lot of influence on those francophone speaking countries in Africa. I think it doesn't help that, again, this has also manifested itself in the form of the quote unquote financial aid, the quote unquote influence in terms of the military aspect that France has on those countries in Africa. So to me, the influence is still quite strong. In terms of looking for a way forward, again, you know, I can speculate what could be done, but I think as a political analyst, I'm a novice. So I think, you know, my view is that unless they can find a way to renegotiate this pact, and I don't know how open France will be to that, I feel that France's influence on Africa, on the francophone countries in Africa, will still continue to last for the next 20 to 30 years at least. And I think in terms of what can be done, if you ask me, I don't know what can be done. Because ultimately, unless you get the international community to pressure France into renegotiating those terms or writing them off, you know, who knows how long these francophone countries will continue to be indebted to France for. So it sounds very bleak, it sounds very dire in terms of it's not a very positive outlook, but I'm a realist, isn't it? I don't think France at the time would have agreed to freedom or independence per se if they didn't feel that what they were getting was much, much favorable towards them. So the influence is quite strong. And again, I don't know how those francophone countries can wriggle their way out of truly get the freedom without having to go for a noble set of negotiations.
I think it's definitely a good influence a big influence in terms of the African countries. And I've always felt personally that the truth is a bitter pill to swallow.
Mm-hmm.
And I think by sharing that information more with not just your individual countries, literally all the countries, and coming back to what Koji was saying in terms of Togo being just one small state, if all those countries came under one common kind of dialogue and all spoke together and all felt, look, we're all under the same boat, we're all in the same position in terms of difficulties, what can we do together to come out of this? Then there is some kind of optimism in terms of a big benefit moving forward. But I am definitely personally one of those people that think to somehow kind of stop this whole illusion of celebrating independence. I just think we are given all these propagandas of different illusions to distract us from what the real issues are and the real problems. And if we're being distracted, then we can't really solve any problems in that sense. So in terms of potential growth in that, I think definitely sharing the information and stop celebrating these false images or illusions that aren't really helping them.
Yeah, in regards to the influence in Africa, I think one of the key things, personally, if you ask me, and trust me, for me, just straight away, yes, you're not independent. They need to stop using the franc. Stop using their money. It's one of the key things that you could do. The thing is, you've signed a contract, and I'm not disputing that you haven't signed a contract. You signed a contract, and there is an impact to signing the contract. So I guess really the international, what are they called? What's the equivalent of the AU for the world? Because for me, I don't understand what they're doing, right? Because the whole idea is to fight injustice. Is to step in when you feel like things or a country is doing something untoward to another country. This is how I see it anyway. So maybe my viewpoint is totally wrong from what they're meant to be doing. What was this thing that Kofi Annan was like the leader of?
United Nations.
The United Nations, that's the United Nations, yeah, that's them, right?
So it was set up by a certain elite countries,
of course, I know.
Exempt from being prosecuted and come against.
I know, but I feel like, for instance, now, if these countries come together and come as a collective to say, you know what, we're not going to use the franc anymore, yeah, that would have its influence. I feel like as ourselves, we have a real will have a real impact to play in all of this, because the more and more we kind of have these conversations, the more and more it's going to get to more ears, the more and more it's going to put pressure on France. Because you can imagine if you have Africans that are living in France now, having these conversations among them, they'll start seeing a different light in regards to the bigger picture. Yeah. Do you get what I mean? Because a lot of the times I feel like us as black people, us as Africans, we always want to be like, oh, black people are this, black people are that. This is the narrative that we always give ourselves. We almost try to say to ourselves that we're not good enough. That, yeah, black people are this, black people are that, without really giving it some thought process on what we're saying. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like some of those narratives, people are going to be a bit more, or people are going to think about more what they're saying. Yeah, so first, stop using the franc. 16 countries already, starting from next year in West Africa, have decided to use a new currency called the ECHO. So what they want to do is build a single market, build like a single currency, similar to what the EU have done when they talk about using a euro.
And
yeah.
what Gaddafi was trying to do.
And what Gaddafi is trying to do. So what you need to understand here, yeah, there are some African leaders that really know exactly what's going on, and they are trying to buck the trend. The problem I have is that they might get assassinated. So when I say that everyone here have their say, the reason why I really wanted to have this conversation is to put on record that if any of these African countries, if you hear a coup or anything like that in some of these countries that are quite prominent, like the Rwandas, like the Ghanas, there's certain countries that are making inroads in trying to erase a lot of these things. Yeah, even West Africa adopting this currency, it could be something that the Western powers might be like, what are they doing? Because they're going to get to a point where we don't have that control. So you guys keep your eyes out for a lot of these things that are happening in Africa. Because normally, when you have a leaders that are trying to step in to change, normally they get toppled. Yeah, you had the CIA directly involved in toppling Kwame Nkrumah. They do this. This is part and parcel of their template. It's not like because the Africans are dumb. There are people who realize, and that's the thing, they don't want a revolution. They don't want to have a martyr, because the minute that you believe in someone, everyone, that whole uprising, that whole revolution, right? So I feel like we have our part to play in it, because we need to continue this conversation, and we need to understand, in the scheme of things of where we play, we're not all of a sudden so what's the word? So enlightened that we're so smarter than everyone else in Africa, then we know the best way that these countries need to be led. We need to be graceful, and we need to be very, what's the word? Not empathetic, but we need to understand the conditions that people are living in. You need to understand the conditions that these presidents are moving in. And we need to understand some of the stuff that's happening in Africa as well, because there's a lot of stuff that these leaders are doing now. Yeah, they fully understand where Africa needs to go, where they're trying to move towards the whole AU actually being a proper representative when it comes to free trade and marketing. So now some of the rules that they're putting in place as well is trading within Africa, because they use the example of, if you wanted to, like, for instance, travel within Africa, it's more expensive. It's like you have to leave Africa to then go back in Africa, which is just crazy and ridiculous, right? So I just feel like, look, this thing that has been put in place, yes, they signed the contract, but I feel like if these countries come together to say, look, they're not using the franc anymore, if France wants to be penalizing them on a lot of these things that they did with these countries, I think now, especially if everyone's talking about it, it's very evident that when these things are happening, so all of a sudden, if you see French army marching into a country, then you know this is what they're doing. So I feel like, because if you're more awake to it, then you're not going to keep talking about that whole narrative about this president not doing what they're doing, so they need to get toppled. The whole nonsense idea of what they did with Libya. And even one point I was going to touch on, is this whole, and I'm doing a very long thing, I understand that, but sorry, I need to get this across, right? So, of course, you know, this whole Libya thing, when Gaddafi was toppled and Gaddafi is killed, that's opened up the whole people crossing the Mediterranean to get into Europe, right? And the Italian government said to France, like, you need to be dealing with these people, because you're the people that are still taking taxes from these countries. The Italian government actually said that. Yeah, and it's only when I start following this trend that I came across that the Italian government actually said something like that. Because they're like, if these countries are giving you all this money and the people are leaving the country because there's nothing there for them, then they need to be coming there to be seeking asylum from your country, because you're directly impacting the situation in their countries. Yeah. So you need to be taking precedent, right? But this country come and take from you, and you go there and you beg. You beg, you know. Exactly. It's your flipping money that builds this country. And you go there and you're made to feel like a third-class citizen, like some sort of animal. They're watching you die. They're watching our people die across the Atlantic. Mate, it's unbelievable. It makes me want to cry. When I watch these things, I literally cry.
We need to do part 2.
Mate, it's just, anyway, that's just why it's just ridiculous that we live in this world where people are acting as if things are meant to be fair, freedom, and then we have such injustices going on. And then they put, in regards to media, they put on the media that these people want the better life because the countries are so shit. You have Trump, what did Trump say about things? Shithole countries, or whatever that he said. Shithole countries. But they know exactly what they are doing, right? Yeah. And then we regurgitate that, saying, yes, it's right, Africa's a shithole country. What have they done for their own people? That is the problem. It's our minds, for me, is the problem. Because when we start doing that, we start telling our children the same thing.
Yeah.
So how is that change going to come?
That's it, literally. But anyway, that's probably another part 2.
Anyway, yeah. So
no, I mean, seriously.
So thank you for listening to the LDN Perspective podcast, and Mo, thank you for leading this conversation. I guess as we have more conversation, we'll have different people leading, just to bring a bit more variety in how we lead the conversation. And our listeners, thank you. I wonder what you guys think of this conversation. As Mo said before, if you have any questions, or we would like to know your thoughts about this conversation. So, you know, if a quick 30 seconds, record yourself, send it over to our Instagram account so we could just see what you guys actually, your viewpoint on this conversation would be quite great. Please get in contact with us. We want to create more of an organic platform. So if you have any questions, please check our Instagram page, which is LDN Perspective. You could also reach us on Twitter, Perspective LDN, and please, you could always drop us an email at ldnperspective@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.
Perspectives, different views, one voice.